Ladies and gentlemen, super excited to be here today. Episode 24 of the Check the Wire podcast. Myself, Ryan, Gary, Northernlion, the Turner. What's going on, man?
Not too much. Happy to be here on Monday again on a day where apparently it's going to hit 35 degrees Celsius in Vancouver.
Translation.
That's what my wife told me. You know what? Here, it's the power of technology.
Okay.
35 Celsius to Fahrenheit. Please.
90.
95.
Woo! And so that's new tech out there. Will you get out there riding the bike around, do some hopscotch? What are you going to do out there?
No, that's like Canadian heat stroke level.
95 degrees?
Yeah. I mean, I already, like on Saturday, we had to pressure wash the concrete surfaces on the outside of our building. And
like for the whole building?
No. just for our lot in life. And I thought it was going to take like 5 minutes, and it took like 45 minutes, and I got a little sunburn. So I'm like, I'm in for the rest of the week now.
Because like pressure washing to me is like as close to a video game as you can get while actually doing like real labor. Like
I would say
spraying a gun. Why did it take so long?
I would say that, well, we borrowed the pressure washer from our in-laws. Mm-hmm. I would say that, you know, I don't want to cast aspersions on them, but it's possible that they didn't get one of the video game pressure washers. Let's just say, you know, if you're used to playing, you know, the Sony PlayStation, this was like having a Pony Say station. Just didn't. It's like we had to look really closely and be like, is it working? And then we had to hold it like right up to the concrete to get it to spray it off. But eventually it got there.
You know, you got to be careful with those things, right? Don't take like the skin right off your bones. You know,
that's what at first when Kate was using it, I was like, you got to be careful. Because if you spray it like at your hand, you could cut your finger off. And then like it wasn't working very well. And then I put my hand in front of it and it didn't even sting. And I was like, there's no way this is gonna get the lime or whatever it is off of the concrete.
Super dad minutia here. Was it gas powered or electrical powered?
It was electric powered. That might be part of the problem, you know?
Yeah. No, but you know what? So that's your first pressure washing experience.
It was. And I don't know if we ever do it again, maybe I'll try to, I don't know, probably just hire somebody. Or I don't know if I want to buy my own pressure washer. That seems a little much, but
you said why, just to enlighten me, why did you have to do it?
Well, you didn't have to. It just like it looks ugly, you know? So we still have we have some pride in the outside area. Well, we have time before the newborn comes and saps everything for you know, a decade or two.
So like with me, like I'm not a big lawn guy or lawn maintenance guy. It's like I would just prefer to not have stuff to take care of, you know, like just make it all hardscaping. But when you walk around your complex, are you like, man, their concrete's a little dirty? Is that like?
There's some. I'm not an HOA guy. I'm not gonna rat on anybody. But there's times where I'm like, you got a lot of trash in your patio area. And I'm like, it doesn't look nice. I would personally prefer if you remove the trash from your patio area and put it like in the garbage can or something. But, you know, maybe that's just me. But I would never be like, Unit 613 has like a kayak on their balcony. Get them out of here.
Wait, so people are just putting trash on their balcony? Like
Not trash, but like storage.
Oh, I got you.
It's not technically not trash, I guess, if it's usable, but it looks trashy.
Oh. Okay, well, look, we know Ryan's a very modernistic, clean looking. On my end, like, and here's the thing, my thoughts, this is not the place for it, but my thoughts on grass, I think when you go down the street and you see a lot of grass, it's good. But when you think about the concept of grass, you're like, it's never ending. You got to water it, you got to cut it, you got to fertilize it, you got to get the grub. Like, it's like a never ending job.
Yeah, I don't like lawns, personally.
Yeah, and it's like, how come no one's invented, like, I don't know, something that's not grass but works like grass, and you don't have.
I mean, you could just let the lawn grow, and then it would look not like the American dream, but it would be better for the environment for sure.
Yeah,
and also a lot less work.
Well, speaking of a lot less work, and I think we're doing a live Q&A podcast today.
You can tell we got a lot to talk about from the lawn discourse early on.
Well, I brought this up right before we went live, and typically we do the live episodes on Thursday, and we got like a nice work week under our belt, or a lot of it. And when did the stuff we've been doing on Monday. So I think next week we'll move it back. And it's just we're coming off hot off the weekend. Ryan was out there grilling. What were you grilling? Brats?
Didn't really. So I mean, again, it depends how much minutia you want to get into. I'm a 3-meal-a-day guy, but sometimes on Saturday we'll have like a late lunch. And if we eat out with a late lunch, I usually don't eat dinner because I'm stuffed like the whole day. So I didn't eat dinner on Saturday. Instead, I ate 2 lunches at like 4:30 p.m. So I don't have a good answer for you, unfortunately.
Well, I got a good. So Sundays around our boat are for grilling, and my in-laws were going out of town, so they dropped off some food. I'm like, okay, sure, so there was like a marinated Tupperware of meat, and they're like, oh, there's chicken in there. I'm like, okay, so we'll do some chicken and maybe a little steak. So I go to start grilling them up, and like there's these white, and I've grilled in my day, like there's these white patties, and like they're thick, and I'm like, this isn't chicken. It looks like a chicken steak. And I throw it out there, and you taste it, like, this isn't chicken. So like I had to go through the checklist of like, what is this? Is it like a tofu steak? Any guess as to what it is?
I mean, I would think that it would be like some kind of like tempeh burger or something like that, or a tofurkey, or a thick white patty, like a crab cake or a shrimp croquette or something like that.
You know what? I get the marketing now. It's the other white meat.
It's pork. It's just pork.
Yeah, they threw pork. I'd never grilled pork in my life, and I'm like, this is like, it's like a white steak. Anyways,
so I was going way too exotic. I didn't realize
it's
that
the other
was
white meat. So anyway, so from the other white meat, so we got a ton of Q&A. We're gonna get through as many as humanly possible. I think last time we set the over under on 30 questions, so we're gonna rapid fire as many as we can. This is from back in the day. I'm gonna let you hit this one because I feel like you do this a little bit more than me. This is from Numfuddle on Twitch. Says, what are the long effects of talking to yourself for hours at a time? Does it bleed into real life, and does it get weird when you don't talk?
So I've long been a proponent of, and it's not so much just about talking to yourself, but I do think that if you don't have hobbies outside of streaming, full stop, streaming actually rots your brain slowly. I don't have any evidence to back it up except anecdotal evidence, but I feel like in periods of time where I'm streaming for a long time and not doing anything else, I am dumber than I was when I was like 20. But I also feel like when you're younger, you're in school 8 hours a day, something like that. So you're constantly like mentally active. And sometimes when you're streaming, like you're searching to make it entertaining, but you're not like, it's not hard. It's not like you're searching for an answer to a problem that is like a novel concept to you. You're just like, what would be funny here? So there are times when I think back and I'm like, I think I've become stupider by doing this. But in terms of like talking to yourself, well, I guess I'd ask, how do you feel about that?
Well,
I can see you looking up. Looking up is the sign of I disagree.
No, you just said something like the opposite. Where you're like, yeah, when you're in class and you're in school and you're learning, like you're mentally active. I'm like,
yeah.
No, I'm like drawing doodles. I'm not listening to anything what Professor Krupke has to say. And then, but in my mind, when I'm streaming, like the synapses are firing on 18 different levels. But you think that actually is like the synapse is firing, and we're just coasting and not actually using our intellect when we're streaming?
I guess it's maybe 2 different skill sets, or definitely 2 different skill sets. Because like when I write now, I write like an 8th grader. I make horrible typos that when I read them back a second time, I'm like, oh my God, this is horrible. Like the emails that I write give the impression that I dislike people or that I don't know how to read and write at this point in my life. Whereas when I was in school, you're writing so much that, you hone the skill. But I think I'm definitely I think I'm smarter at like developing ideas verbally and getting them out there now. So I just 2 different skills, but there are definitely, I don't know. There's also times where I talk to other people like that work normal jobs. And I'm like, maybe I'm not as stupid as I think I am.
Well, I mean, like you're saying stuff and I'm like, I'm checking the boxes. You said when you write, like I know you could speak to this, but anyone that's ever got a Discord message from me or had seen it, It's like at least 3 typos. There's no spaces and there's at signs. And it's like, it's just, but I wonder, does streaming reduce your intellect? If you had to say, if you were writing a thesis on it, you would say, I
would probably say that it in a vacuum does, but I don't think that it's necessarily that it makes you dumber. But I think it depends on what you're looking for out of intellect, I guess, if that makes sense.
Well, I think if you lose intellect, do you lose like?
I think that if you were a full-time streamer for a year and had no hobbies outside of streaming, if you replace that with reading, if somehow your job was a professional novel reader or something like that, you would probably be demonstrably more intelligent in that avenue after a year. But you would also, I don't know, you would lose something, I'm sure. But I think maybe the spirit of this question is actually like, because the other avenue that I was going to take with it is I think that something I've seen from streamers and YouTubers is like, if your only interaction is like standing on the pulpit and talking to chat, and then the only thing that you get back is you're a genius, this is hilarious, or you're the dumbest idiot of all time. I think you can get to the point where you either you vacillate between the two, and you go like, I'm a huge idiot, or the one that I actually think is a lot worse is like, I'm the smartest person in the world. And that's where you end up with streamers who are talking way above their station about ideas that they definitely are not qualified to talk about. So I think that's probably the more likely negative scenario there. If you don't have a well-rounded social network that can kind of keep you grounded.
So to TLDR, Ryan, essentially you're saying is the act of streaming doesn't make you dumb. The act of not having anything else outside of streaming could contribute to a decrease in intellect.
That's my 2 cents.
Okay.
And I'm not saying other people get dumber. I'm saying I feel like I've gotten dumber.
One thing on my end, because he says when you talk about yourself or you're talking to yourself for hours at a time, does it bleed into real life? And it's like the same for me. It's like I talk so much when I'm live. When I'm home, I'm like pretty kind of gassed out, at least for a while. But like I'm more interested in hearing what other people have to say as opposed to like talking a lot, because you do something so much, you're like, oh, I'm gassed out. It reminds me of like back when, I would coach football. Like I would coach high school football and I'd come home and like, I don't want to watch college football. I don't want to watch NFL because I'm just like, you're kind of over it. Not over it, but you can only do so much of the same thing for this long period of time. But I guess the last question part of this is does it get weird when you guys don't talk? Like if you don't record videos or do a stream in a couple days?
I would say probably not. I don't know. You're like, is it weird if you're like, an accountant for 8 hours a day and you come home and you're like not balancing ledgers and stuff like that? I don't think so. But it does mean that probably when you go home, if somebody is like, hey, can you take a look at our budget? You'd probably be like, I'm not really motivated to do so all the time. But I don't know. I'm pretty much the same boat as you, as Kate will attest. Like I'm on stream talking, like it's sensory overload to the point that it like blows out your neurotransmitters. And then when I'm out, I just want to like be quiet for a bit.
I would be willing to do this if there was ever a study. I would wear one of those caps with the diodes on it or whatever, and like have it just like follow me for the day or record it for the day. And then during streaming, I wonder if it's just like nuclear explosions on one of those like scans about.
Dude, I have long been a proponent, and people largely disbelieve me. Streaming makes me, and I'm not saying it's as hard as physical labor, but it makes me hungrier than like doing physical labor. That after 3 hours of streaming, I feel like my entire body's supply of everything has just been, even if the stream was not that high energy, I'm like, all the dopamine's gone. All the acetylcholine is gone. All the calories are gone. All the water is gone. So when I finish the stream, I just drink like, I don't know, like 2 pints of water in 10 seconds, like a professional athlete.
You're sitting in the corner of the ring.
I could legitimately, I genuinely think I could eat easily like a 1,200 or 1,500 calorie meal after a Monday NLSS, which is not good because you're not actually burning that much, in my opinion. But anyway,
Well, you stoked something in my head. It's like in a 9 to 5 job. I'm sure there's moments when you're at your desk and you're like not working. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
there's like well, you're just not working. And like I get it, but and I feel like not to say like streaming's hard or anything, but I think comparatively, at least on I think I can speak for you and myself, there's not like a second where you're not working on stream, because if you are, then it gets resident sleeper to watch. Like if you're not thinking of like, okay, hey, how can I make this into a bit? What sound, button bite do I want to play? It's not like you're not like we can't like take 20 minutes off to search on Amazon for pressure washing nozzles or anything like that. We're like in a 9 to 5 you can do that. So but at the same time, I don't stream 8 hours a day. I know you don't either. So
no.
But
I mean, I always like to, because I think that you and I probably work harder than the average 9 to 5 worker. I'm not afraid to say that. But what I will say,
okay.
what I will say is I think our job is a lot more fun by default. So I think we have it so much easier because of the fact that we like to actually do the job. Whereas depending on what you're doing as like a white collar office job, you might not be that motivated. That makes it harder. It makes the 8 hours feel longer than 8 hours. Whereas sometimes for me, I'll start working at like 10 a.m. and it'll be like 8 p.m. and I'm like, oh, I have to get off. Otherwise, I'm going to be screwed for tomorrow. But I have the appetite to go longer.
So I wouldn't say what Ryan said, but I don't disagree with them.
I'm not saying we have it harder. I think we have it easier. Yeah. But I think if you audited the time, and I don't think it's true for all YouTubers, streamers, but I think if you audited our time, I think we work longer at least than the average white collar worker.
No, and I think there's a lot into it. I mean, this is not standing on the pulpit saying why we work harder than other people, but I know it's similar for you. It's not like I don't just show up and hit the stream button. It's like there's a lot that goes on, and so I don't know. It's I think at the end of the day, it's like you said, it's a really fun job, but it doesn't feel like we're working hard because it's so much fun. But just like that, you can lose it. But to kind of piggyback off what you said is. There's like something it's starting, I don't want to say it's loosening up around here, but there's like an extracurricular activity I'm going to get to start doing starting today. And it's like with some people, not like a ton of people. And I'm just so excited. It was like when that came in, I'm like, okay, my first thought is, okay, I'm gonna have less time to work. But I was also excited because it's like, we've been doing this like extra grind for a long time. And I feel like, hearing you say that having something other than streaming where you can interact with people is really important. I feel like that may be one of the things that when it's all said and done might be overlooked during this period of quarantine for a lot of people, is just to be able to physically interact with people. And I know like Zoom calls and stuff like that, but it's still I don't know, I think there's something to it.
I'm gonna piggyback off of that because I think it's an interesting question. We've been in quarantine for like 5 months now, or 4 months. And it's like normal now. But do you think that you work less or more and in quarantine? And then secondarily, let's say like magically it lifted and like the reason for it was gone to begin with. Do you think what you're doing now would be sustainable, or would you pivot to less work or more work?
Yeah, 100%. I've worked way more during quarantine in terms of like live hours and more videos, and it's 100% not sustainable, but at the beginning I looked at like, okay, hey, this is just gonna be like a short like push, maybe a month or two, and then it's like it's not a short so and we talked about last week, like I hit walls, right? Like and so I think it's, for me, it definitely worked a heck of a lot more, but it's also like you get to a point where you're like, okay, hey, how do you want your life to be? Do I want my life to be like on camera recording videos like 90% of the day? And I don't. So it's good. It's like a good balance. But can I go a month when there's something exciting going on and do that? Yeah. What about you? Do you feel like you've worked more or less, or have you dialed it back?
I've dialed it back now, but from probably like the middle of March to like the start of July was really unsustainable for sure. But I was heavily motivated. But I'm glad we dialed it back a little bit. There's still, I mean, I say it every time. There's no way I can put out 5 or 6 videos a day plus the streams starting in like late September. But yeah, I mean, it's probably unsustainable if there were no quarantine for sure. And I think that's what I wanted to almost like keep myself honest, because I have scaled it back, but really I've scaled it back in relation to like the reference window of where I was at before, not where I was at pre-quarantine, which is honestly so far back that I can barely even remember what it's like. But it's a lot easier to fit in a little extra time when you know, like, oh, we're not going to go out for dinner tonight, or we're not gonna go grocery shopping at 9:30 p.m. because all the places close 3 hours early now, or et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, and like just to give you guys some more like fourth wall breaking stuff, is normally on Sunday myself, Ryan, and Melf will throw a few messages around. What are we gonna play for Golden Goblet this weekend? We've had like a lot of long running series that's going really well, and we couldn't like really come up with anything. And we're like, you want to skip a week? And I'm like, yeah, we could do that. And like, in comparison, Golden Goblet is really easy to record. Like, it's just really the way it's set up. But at the same time, I think I'm more apt to just be like, okay, hey, look, we can take a week off and come back and everything's going to be okay. It's like, so I'm just kind of picking and choosing where, your battles are and kind of taking your foot off the gas. All right, next question. This is from Dakuna. It says, how different do you think streaming for a big audience is compared to a small audience? And I'm doing air quotes for the audio listeners.
Yeah, sure.
Do you have to change the way you stream as you were growing?
I'm like the weirdest example on Twitch, because
you started with a big audience.
I basically been like at X the whole time. There's been variations up, there's been variations down, but it's been within a pretty like small margin of tolerance, I guess. But I will, like, even within the shows, like Monday, Tuesday do super well. Like, everyone loves the Josh NLSS day because it's insane and I get upset, which people want to see. And then Unity, people love it because it's been out of control. And to put it in the most corporate way possible, we built like the Unity brand over several years and people know what they're going to get and they like it. Thursday, which is the solo Dark Souls 2 show, varies, but is in the pits right now because we're in the Dark Souls 2 DLC.
Did you do the horses?
I was 2.5 hours on the horses and have not seen the boss yet. But we're getting there. We're going to get there.
That is the darkest time of all of Souls. And there is no, once you get through that, there is no more pits. But
it's truly, I don't even want to get into it, but it's truly horrible that somebody would release that for an entertainment product. But can you imagine if back in the day, if you paid money and then that was what you got out of it? Like, you bought the DLC and you're like, oh, I can't wait to experience the DLC. And then you got there. That was probably before Steam refunds existed too.
I can't have the memory of a young squirrel, so I can't remember what the fights are like. I just remember being like covered in mist and then horses come out of nowhere and you're just rolling the dice. Is that like, it probably has...
It's like a 5K from the bonfire to the boss wall.
Oh, I forgot about that.
And then there's a few little like castles along the way that you can sort of hide in, but the horses can still fit through the doors. And then unlike and now it's video games, but that's okay. Unlike every other area in Dark Souls 2, if you kill the enemies enough times, they don't stop respawning until like you kill them 100 times instead of 8 or 9, or maybe it's 12. But so, and then there's not like 5 of them. There's like spawn points throughout the arena. And basically, the way it seems to work is that the game's constantly checking. Is like, are there horses? Are there horses? And if it's no, or there's only one and they're far away, then they just spawn one from the closest spawn point. So there's no getting around it. Anyway, that's Dark Souls 2, which is... So streaming to different sized audiences, Thursday and Sunday is a little lower. I think it does change the vibe a little bit for sure. On Thursdays and Sundays, I'm always focused on being entertaining, but it's certainly a much different kind. It's a dialed down form of entertainment instead of the Monday. Like, Monday is just, I know I'm going into it and I'm just throwing my blood pressure on the line, and that's okay. And then Tuesday, I know that it's more like, you ride the waves. There's times where it's like, we're not doing anything. And then there's times where you got to bring the energy. And then Thursday and Sunday, I'm more like, it's almost like a more casual day where I'm a little bit less concerned about having those like bombastic sort of clippable moments and more like, it's just kind of hanging out. But I don't know. I wonder about streamers sometimes that have grown from like 50 viewers to 10,000. If they think about like the much more casual way that they were, and maybe said some things that in hindsight they wish they hadn't said because they didn't have the spotlight on them, and then when they get to 10,000 viewers or 50,000 viewers, are like, I kind of wish I treated it the same way all the way up in hindsight. But I don't know. What's your perspective?
Yeah, my take is that, as someone who's like, used to, let's say you started, what, 2,000 people watching, 1,500?
Yeah.
Okay. So like I started, like, and I've like grown like just year over year. And I do stuff different, not from when way different from when I started. But if I see, I keep the numbers up, and I just like to see what's going on and have an idea. And like, I won't change the show I put on, meaning that whether there's 400 or 800 or 1,200, I'm still putting on the same show. What I will do though is if I see there's a lot more people than normal that I don't recognize, I'll do a lot more explaining in terms of, hey, here's what you expect, or hey, so for example, new Tarkov patch dropped today and there were some new people. I'm like, hey, look, they're like, hey, are you going to check out this new customs area? I'm like, yeah, but if we die, what we lack in skill, we try to make up for having fun and not taking things too seriously. So just trying to like remind people what is unique about the show, more so than if it's, like a standard show, so that people who are here that may be watching for the first time understands, okay, what is different about this stream or this show or this Tarkov stream than other people. So especially if I see like high numbers like that are disproportionate, I'm more apt to like introduce and say, hey, here's what's unique, here's what the community's like. Where if it's like a normal show, I don't really do that as much. So I say like maybe I do tactical stuff a little bit different, but in terms of like, it's not like I'm going from like a level 10 energy to a level 400 because there's a couple more, people watching or anything like that. And like, and I don't like, I've heard the term like fake it until you make it, which I don't know if, I necessarily agree with that, because another tactical thing, and we've talked about this probably 20 episodes ago or so, is the thing that I've had to change a little bit is how you read off subs, right? And so you're at the one end of the scale where you used to read them at the end of the show. Now they're alerts. And now I used to read them as they come in and at the end of the show, but I started to notice like at the end of the show, people are just out of there. They just leave. No one wants to hear that. And number two, it's like, if people don't want to watch that, why don't I maximize that end time as opposed to, just reading that off? So that's something I have changed recently, and I didn't like really talk about it. But in terms of, have you ever heard the term like fake it until you make it? Especially, what's your take on that?
I don't know. For streaming, I'm not really sure how it would apply. I always heard it in terms of like confidence. Like if you were going for like a sales job or something like that, you wouldn't wait until like you got confident. You would just pretend to be confident and eventually you'd get there. I don't really know how it works for streaming. Although I would say, I guess the only way I could think of it applying is like, if you're streaming to like 0 people or 1 person or 2 people, there might be a temptation to be like, I'm not going to talk that much because I don't know what to say. And I don't have to worry about being that entertaining because there's only 2 people here. All I need to do is read whatever they say and respond to it, and they'll stick around. So maybe always treating it and having the philosophy like we're trying to make it as entertaining as possible for a broad audience is maybe how it could apply. But apart from that, I'm not really sure.
Yeah, I'm kind of on board with that in terms of like, I don't think you should. I think whatever you see your show being a year or 2 from now is how you should treat it in the moment, and not, but at the same time, take advantage of where you are, right? Like kind of appreciating where you are. If there's 20 people watching you, you could interact with all 20 of those people, versus when it gets, it can get out of hand, or not out of hand, but it can get unmanageable sometimes. All right, this is an interesting one. This one just came in. This one says, this is from Shodan 131 live in the polling audience. Says, can you speak about VOD boys and how do you feel about people just watching the VODs, and what percentage do you think it is?
I am very pro VOD.
Mhm.
I've said this before, and it makes people laugh, but it's also true that like sometimes the ideal viewer is just somebody who watches the content and doesn't interact. I like at least 95 to 99% of the community interaction is totally positive, but I've never had a bad experience where I was like, oh, too many people are watching and not enough people are giving their feedback, right? Like that's I would never want to tell people interact less, because the people who would listen to that are the people that are going to leave comments that I like reading. The people who would not listen to that are the people who are like, no, he needs to hear this right now. But when people are, I guess it's flattering for me. Like if I look at my view count during a stream, and it's like, I don't know, like 4,000 in my head, and it's kind of like taking it for granted. But I'm like, it's just another day. Not to say like I'm not grateful for it, but I'm like,
Yeah.
instead of looking at it like, wow, that's like you could put that in a small stadium or something like that. Instead, I'm like, yesterday it was 4,200, or yesterday it was 3,800. So we're doing well. You look at it like in that frame of reference. But when I look at a VOD on Twitch and it has like 15,000 views or something like that, I'm incredibly flattered, because 4,000 people watching live is flattering. People have choices, they're choosing to watch you. But 15,000 people, when you're not live, actively seeking out the video and being like, I missed this, I'm going to navigate to it and actually watch it, that's like very, very flattering to me.
And you don't have to hear the comments.
I don't have to read anything in the comments. Yeah. So I really like it. I mean, I would never, if you and I have the same philosophy on this, I would never tell people like, here's how you should watch the content. Of course, I would love it if you watched live and then you were like, that was so good, I'm going to watch it again on VOD, but that's insanity. So, I think if you like watching the VODs, watch the VODs. If you can be there live, be there live. What's better? Doesn't matter to me. Whatever's better for you is better for me.
Yeah, I think I don't want to echo exactly what you said. One of my, I want to say favorite things, 'cause I have a lot of favorite things about streaming, but one of the cool things is when someone will come in and be like, hey, I've been watching your VODs for so long. This is the first time I've been able to catch one live. And to me, it's like, yeah, and the only comparison is like, all right, you listen to an album, and then when you get to like go to the concert live, you're like, yeah, I got a little more sauce. So it's always exciting to me when someone who's only watches VODs because of their schedule or whatever gets to like be live. I always try to make it like a little bit bigger deal, because I think that's cool, and that's that someone thinks enough to maybe they who knows if they move their schedule around, or maybe they saw, hey, I got a hole in my schedule, I can catch it live. I think that's cool, and on the VOD side, the same thing for you. The only thing I'll add is that you'll hear me say this time and time again in the history of this podcast, I just try to make all the content as frictionless as possible. So if you watch it on Twitch, cool. You go on the second YouTube channel, that's cool. I'm not going to tell you where the best benefit for me is for you to watch it, because number one, I don't know, and number two, like, I don't care. Just watch what's best for you. But I guess if we were to like break it down, I feel like more about the analytics and stuff like that. If someone were to watch on YouTube versus Twitch, is it monetarily?
I'm sure there's a difference. I'm sure there is, but I have the exact same perspective as you, where, I mean, for user supported content stuff, where like if people were like, hey, would you rather I'm trying to think about the best way to wait, like if I have $50, what's worth more for you, like a direct donation or giving gift subs or buying something from like the Twitch store that you have affiliate sales for? Like there's a huge difference on an individual level, but in terms of like ad supported content, literally it doesn't matter at all. Like if you're one person, even if you watch 10,000 videos a year, if you watch 30 videos a day, which is unlikely, we're talking about like such a minor change in the difference from one to the other, that it's honestly like whatever is better for you is just better overall. So you keep watching the content, and you don't have you're less likely to be like, oh, I'm going out of my way to watch it on this one so he gets an extra 0.2 cents per 10 views, and
and just for context, Ryan is not, he's being extremely straightforward. The first time I met Ryan, he made this video about like tips for doing YouTube videos. And one of the first things I said after I met him was like, hey, dude, that video really helped. And he's like, hey, thanks for the 5 cents. I'm like,
which is a good joke, by the way. I still stand by it. But it's also like to some extent, and I'm constantly working through community stuff and my philosophy about it. But there is like, that's why I'm willing to take more abuse on Twitch than I do in the YouTube comments for a couple of reasons. On Twitch, it's a little bit more banter and it's back and forth. But on YouTube, if you see like a comment that's like mean-spirited and like a cheap shot, and you're like, 70% chance you got ad block to begin with. It's not worth even if you don't, it's not worth the mental health cost, even if it's just a little dent to be reading this. Whereas on Twitch, I'm like, oh, if somebody's a subscriber, and I'm like, it is worth the mental health cost to deal with this, because they've invested in the content. They've shown that they like it, and as a result, you're kind of like, it's easier to take, but also there's a benefit to the cost, if that makes sense.
I don't want to dig too deep, but I got to drop the smile because it is a serious question. But you said like taking abuse. Like, I know you say it kind of tongue in cheek, but also like kind of serious. Like, what do you mean by that?
Well, I don't know. It's really, we're at a point community wise on YouTube. The comments have been in 2020 1,000 times better than in 2019, which is awesome. And every series is like, I was talking about it to Malf. I was like, every series except Monster Train, the comments are like, Pog City, they saved my life. Wow, great shot. I had laughed so much during this video. Monster Train, every top comment is like some variation of like 8 minutes, says he wants to win, 51 minutes, loses. What is this guy doing? And then they like write like really snarky, like, well, I knew it wasn't going to work when he did. I can't believe this guy is going to have a kid. Are you serious that he can't even do a card game in it? And then at the end, there's like after the whole essay of like talking down to you and belittling you and insulting you, they write like, in all seriousness, though, I love the videos. I look forward to them every single day. So that's kind of where I'm at with the Monster Train video specifically, where I'm like, I am not that frustrated by it, but I will admit, when I read the other series comments, I'm like, heart, reply, heart, reply, heart. When I read Monster Train, I'm like, scroll, heart, scroll, heart.
Like, does that, it just affects you to a point where you're like, you know how to like gate it off from your mind? Where like, and Twitch, you're willing to let that come in.
Twitch is give and take, right? Because when you can take the temperature of chat. You could be like, oh, this is spicy. Someone said something that's getting people to pop off. And then you sort of like, what's the word for it? You know, you like debuff. I'm trying to, there's like a chemistry word for it, you know, but you start to neutralize it, I guess, and then pull it back. And then it gets a little too much in the other direction and people are falling asleep. And then you're like, you know, cold foods and warm foods taste the same. And then they start to move back in the other direction. So it's good. Yeah, the buffer, that's what I'm looking for. You try to buffer it to keep it within like an entertaining range. Whereas on YouTube, you make it and then it's out. And then people write the reply as if you won't read it most of the time.
Well, to hit you with some academia here, I've been reading the Spelunky book by Derek Yu at night, and he quoted a poet, I don't know if it was Walt Whitman, but he said, the opposite of love isn't hate. The opposite of love is indifference. So the way, I mean, and it's easy for me to say because I'm not reading thousands of comments saying, hey, nice play, dummy. But like, the difference is like those people care enough to say, hey, maybe one day he'll, you know, play this 2-3 flyer with vigilance, you know, as opposed to like, would you, you know, and this is, I'm using Ryan as an example, and he doesn't need to be made an example, but it's like either that, would you rather have that, or would you rather have nothing in the comments, you know? And
I would definitely rather have that.
Because at least like, you know, that may be bringing in more of like DAE comments, but people care enough. And I think that, and that was like when you were going on that, I'm like, I bet at the end of that comment, that dude or girl, whoever left that comment, I bet they still love your videos, you know?
Yeah.
You know?
The frustration for me is not like, oh, why are people being so mean? The frustration is almost like at a professorial level where I'm like, I know you like the content because I see a little badge next to your name that's like subscribed for 5 years or something like that. Why do you write so rudely? If you just wrote the way that you clearly enjoy the content into the message instead of phrasing it in like the most internet poisoned way possible that is like just incredibly cynical and like designed to just attract attention and get thumbs up in the YouTube comments. If you just wrote it like the way you actually feel, it wouldn't be offensive, but it also would probably get one thumbs up instead of 35 thumbs up. So the YouTube comments is almost like its own content ecosystem where you're going to get more attention the more incendiary it is.
And just kind of hit me the metaphor. I got a metaphor and then a real life example. The metaphor I think of is like you or whoever rooting for the Canucks or the Pistons. And like you may yell something at your TV like Pavel Datsyuk, he couldn't hit the broadside of a barn or something like that. But the difference is you're like the Canucks and they're like, they want you to hit the goal and they root for you. And then when you don't, they're like, well, if you just would have lifted your wrister up a little bit, you would have went top shelf past Patrick Waugh and we'd be okay. But I think we hit on an interesting point, and I think it's just the temperature of maybe the internet right now, which I don't think is necessarily fair, but it is. And personal example is with this. There's this upcoming season of Big Brother, and it's pandemonium, and the season hasn't even started. There's like the rumors, and people are going after people they think are in the house, or like all this stuff. And I know for a fact I could tweet something out like contributing to that, and it would go through the roof on social media. But like on the flip side, like I've kind of taken really the stance that even starting with the show is like, I don't want to put that out there. Like, I don't want to encourage that. That's not what I want. Yeah, you could lever the heck out of it. But for me, it's like I take the opposite stance and I send something out like, hey, look, like these are real people. They have real lives going in there to entertain you. I mean, I didn't say it like this, but this is what I was thinking on the message. They're going into a situation of uncertainty to entertain you. Like, just take it easy on them, and I think over time. But the thing that you said is like the positive comment on your video, so get like one like, but the one saying, hey, a nice misplay at 45-55 dummy, that gets a lot of upvotes. I don't know why that is, but it just is. And so I'm trying to like, even though that is like the result, I don't know if it's result oriented or the most social traction. I'm just trying to, even if it doesn't get that, I don't care. I'm just trying to like put out the opposite. And I think what you've seen that over time with your community, like you've rewarded behavior in the community, whether indirectly or directly through like liking comments or responding about what to do, as opposed to like, responding to Jimmy Boy 5000 saying, hey, be nicer, and
yeah,
I don't know.
I wanted to ask you as well, because as when I found out we were doing a Q&A episode, I was like, I think it's a good question because for context, like you said, the Big Brother community is going insane right now. I saw you tweet about Big Brother last night, and I went to the Big Brother subreddit, and it was like mega thread number 4 rumors before BB22, and it had 9.1 thousand comments, and it was like 2 days old or something like that. And I'm like, oh my God. So what I wanted to ask from your perspective is, do you think that being in front of such a large audience on TV before you even had this online presence with streaming and YouTube, do you think it influenced the way that you treat community, especially because you inevitably on the show, I'm sure you had lots of people that disliked you because of the way that you played the game, but not having an ability to respond to that, I guess, while you're playing the game, I wonder if that had an influence.
I think for me, like I would say to say it wouldn't be truthful. But I think it just made me more comfortable with dealing with like, the comments that may be a little rude, because, anything that anyone's going to say how bad I am at Tarkov or Spelunky is like nothing compared to what's been said to me about like, oh, you did this in the game and, you're never going to come back from that. And how could you, just like personal attacks. It's like you've taken so much of that. We're like, like, that doesn't bother me. So like you telling me to hit my shot's forehead, so I think it definitely made my skin thicker, definitely. But I think also I just keep stuff in perspective, right? Like, dealing with negative comments, like it's still like, you're just like, my thing is like, why, if someone's saying that something else is going on, and so I just kind of let it be. But I think in terms of preparation, I think, dealing with it on a rather large scale, more so about me personally than how I'm playing a game, I think definitely made it a lot easier of a transition to Twitch and YouTube for sure. But it's just, and I think it's like to me, like especially the Big Brother community, like I'm super flattered that it's my name's still thrown out there, like even for these insane rumors, which are like just completely off the wall. But the fact that like people still care enough, I haven't been on the show in 8 years. I think it's cool. It's like, it's kind of like to go back to I don't think it's Walt Whitman, but you'd rather people like not forget about you, as like narcissistic as it sounds. It's like, it's cool that like, I haven't played the game in 8 years, but there was an impact that people still enjoyed enough to be like, hey, I know you're coming back. I know you're live streaming on Twitch. They allow you to have their setup in Sequester. I know you're coming back this season. I'm like, oh, I'm not. But thank you. I'm glad that you want me back. But I'm very like, I think as I've gotten older in, I don't know if age or wisdom or whatever, I'm just trying to, whether or not how I'm involved or anything, I just know I'm at the forefront in that community. And I think I can hopefully steer the conversation, whether with alumni and people in the fan base as much as I can. And if I can do that, like I want to do it in a way so people get off the show and they're not like destroyed by social media comments, but we'll see.
Yeah, especially if they don't win.
Yeah. I don't like. There's only one way you walk out of there happy. You compete on a reality TV show and you walk out happy if you win. And even with that, you're still dealing with a lot. So like those other people that have been locked up for 90 days plus, like it's not that fun. Like would you rather be streaming on Twitch 5 days a week or locked up? But anyways, next question. Good, that's good. That'll be clipped. That'll be read. Check the Wire every Tuesday mornings on YouTube, Spotify, SoundCloud, Stitcher. The next question. This is from Crane Bolt Green. Says, how much of your monthly work is automatable, and would you be able to use and/or trust automation tools?
Like maximum like 5%, I would say. And then would I be willing to use it? No.
What's automatable for you?
So automatable would be like if you could make basically like an easy example, I think, is you could make a program that goes into your YouTube dashboard for you, and in videos where like every Spelunky video has the same description, I'm sure, and the same tags, and maybe the same monetization settings and stuff like that. So you can have something go through like your dashboard like that and automate all
like
that
a
stuff.
macro.
Yeah, basically. And like there are things you can automate if you use the same thumbnail for every episode, but maybe you just get the number increments by one. There's something called saved actions in Photoshop where you can just be like, hey, here's how you do it. And then you tell the program how to do it, and then it can just do it 500 times in 30 seconds, right? So some of it is not monetizable, but automatable. But not that much. And then secondarily, I'm like, I wouldn't want to do it just because what I would hate to have happen is you build your own custom built tool and then you plug it into YouTube, and YouTube's like, oh, there's like this program that you got is not to say it's made badly, but for some reason it's hitting us with 5,000 API calls every time that you press this button. So they like ban you because it looks malicious, or like some kind of suspicion is raised as a result. So I have like when I was programming, I did make an application where basically it was like you typed the game name at the top, and then there was like a bunch of check boxes that were like, what kind of game is it? What console is it on? Is this a Let's Play? Is it a Let's Look At? Is it a VOD from Twitch? And you just like type in the game name and then click all the settings and then press a button, and it generates the tags that I wanted. And then I would take that and put it in. That's something you could do. But in terms of like, and I mean, like you could automate like when you post a video, noticing that it's been posted and then tweeting that it's been posted. And I even think that there's a level you could go to where if you were like extremely huge brain, you could build a tool that could go through like a Twitch VOD and look at like chat activity and algorithmically be like, maybe this is the user should think about clipping here because this got a lot of engagement going. and maybe you could even automatically clip it themselves. I have no idea the level that you could actually do with that, but I think most of it, unfortunately, is kind of like you have to create it in the moment, and you have to kind of be hands-on for it. Especially because tinkering with every single video gives you like an advantage as well. Like you don't want to put Spelunky episode 500 is just Spelunky number 500. You want to put your face going like, and then, Olmec tilted 35 degrees to the left, and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I think it's really hard to automate, and my concern is I don't automate anything, but like there's settings like we could post on YouTube where it automatically tweets out when we put out a video. And my concern is like, number one, I got two concerns. One, if I were to do that, right, automate, tweet out every video, or every time automatically I go live on Twitch, it says, hey, come watch me live on Twitch. My concern are two things. One, I don't want my Twitter feed or whatever feed to just be all that. And two, like in the off chance that I call, a Spelunky video Tomato Wars, and it goes out live on a day where there's like, tomatoes are poisoned in the country, like that, like the rolling of the dice there, like it's not worth it. It's not worth it. Like where you just, you put a title out there that's catchy, and it's at the wrong place and wrong time because you automated it. To me, it's not worth it. So, and
there.
Yeah. Well, like, I mean, you guys talk about stuff on the NLSS, and then it happens. People get hurt.
I think on Wednesday's episode of GeoGuessr, which was recorded last night, Sinvicta and I were talking about like, hey, do you think baseball is going to be able to finish their season? Because it seems like they're at like a high risk. You wake up this morning and you're like, 20 Miami Marlins players test positive, and you're like, oh my God. So I'm looking forward to that one going live.
And then the other thing too is when I respond or tweet anything, I want people to know like it's me, not a bot, and I feel like that's like a way to protect it. But I'm with you. It's really hard to automate anything. The only automation that I've done, which has helped, is on my streaming PC, and this is really high tech. So brace yourself. In the startup folder, I have OBS, my Winamp, my chat, and my bot, so I don't have to click that every time we go live. Which you're like, well, is that big of a deal? When you got to start the show at 10 and it's like 9:52, clicking those things, the minutes add up. So for me, it's one less thing I have to worry about, that's like as far as the automation, I'm willing to go.
Yeah.
All right. Next question. It says, this is a little bit more lighthearted. This is from Ricky Garp. It says, if you could move anywhere in the world, where would you move?
I've talked about it on the show before.
Really?
But like I think like Vancouver is a really good spot for me, and BC in general. The weather's nice. I like the culture in the city. It's like naturally beautiful. There's good indoor outdoor stuff. It's a good city to have a young family. It's a little expensive, but or a lot expensive. If I was to move, it would be, I mean, like my number one preference would be like Victoria, which is it's just across the Georgia Strait, basically. So it would be like a lateral move, or like elsewhere in BC. And then after that, it gets a little complicated. Normally, I would like, I don't mind the eastern part of Canada. The winter is terrible. I would prefer not to have to deal with it. I like culturally, I like Seattle, Portland, Bay Area, exactly the same concerns with price, but also like basically a palette swapped version of Vancouver. And then I don't know, there's probably places in Europe as well, but it's a complicated time to answer the question for sure. But I really like being in the Pacific Northwest. I think that, like I like where we are at right now, but I'm sure that our priorities will change as our kid gets older. Like right now we love living in the city, but it may come to the point where we're like, hey, it would be cool if like our 5-year-old didn't have to risk walking by open drug use, if they're around in the city, maybe, or like, hey, we could save so much money if we moved out of the city and moved to like a suburb that still has like the same kind of climate. Maybe you are not as cool on the restaurant front, but we don't go out anyway because we got a 4-year-old or whatever. So I think that for right now it's great, but ask me again in maybe like 5 years.
Before I answer the question, have you ever thought about, because you brought up, you said you live in like a area in which the cost of living is very high. Do you ever think about if you lived in like a lower area in terms of like cost of living? Like I imagine Kingston cost of living is way less than Vancouver.
It's
like,
lower for sure.
Do you ever think
Yeah.
like you just be like, instead of having like 2 golden Lamborghinis, you had like 12 in that?
I guess like we me specifically, like I don't buy anything at all. I mean, I'll order in. That's pretty much like my one
That's your flex.
luxury. Yeah, that's my flex. And even then, like, and Chad can attest to this. Like on Thursday, 2 Thursdays ago, Kate was having lunch with her friend, and I didn't have any food, and I was like, maybe I'll DoorDash like a burrito. So I got on Chipotle. The burrito was $10, and I was like, oh, I can't wait for this burrito. I haven't eaten all day. And when I went to checkout, it was like $20 because the DoorDash fee is like $3, and then the tip for the delivery driver is another like $2.50 plus tax. And I was like, I'd rather starve. I can afford the $20 burrito, but I would honestly rather, I wouldn't feel good about myself clicking the button. So I just X'd out of the tab. So in a way, I mean, it's definitely, I would never, if somebody was like, hey, do you have financial advice for me? I'd be like, yeah, move to a city where, rent is insane. That's not good advice. But for us, it hasn't been that big of a deal because we have we have very little lifestyle inflation. We don't want to own like a jet ski or a yacht or anything like that. So I think that it's been okay. But yeah, I mean, it is. You just prefer not to think about like, oh, what if we went back like 8 years, moved into the middle of the woods, and then took all the rent money that we paid and put it in a, like an index fund or something like that. But at the same time, I'm like, we don't really want like $100 million. There's a level that we can get to that's totally fine.
75 million. He's on
75 million would be pretty sick.
No, so on my end, I think I'm like pretty lucky in terms of rolling the dice and where genetics landed me and everything. In terms of the Midwest, like I love Michigan. It's 4 seasons, and maybe best of all, the cost of living is extremely reasonable. So, for example, not to be comparative, but like I can do this more because I live in Michigan versus living in California. Just the reality of it, homes are less expensive and stuff like that. So for me, it's not so much I would want to move anywhere because I really genuinely love where we live. But traveling is different, but in terms of a home base, I think that's a big thing, and not to like pontificate to other people, but if you really want to go this route of doing content and stuff like that, that's a huge way, I think, to I guess build one of your pillars is don't spend a lot of money or live in an area where the cost of living is significantly less, for the same stuff, right? Like you live in a house in California, the same house in Michigan is like 1/10 or 1/8 the cost. So yeah, so
I mean, to get to your like the first point at which, because I really look at it like there's like leverage points. So like the leaner you start, the easier it's going to be to get to the point where you can go full time. So like I was making like, I don't know, like $1,700 a month US as an English teacher in Korea, but I had no expenses except food because your rent is totally paid for. And I mean, all you have to do is go to work, come home. But I was single. I didn't have anything else going on in my life. I had no hobbies. Like this was my hobby. So how high do you have to get to the point where you can go full time? Pretty low when that's like your break even point. Yeah, exactly. And you're going from, having 2 or 3 hours a day to pursue this to having 12 hours a day to pursue it as soon as you hit that point. And then when you're there, if you put in the pressure at that lever, you can start to get to like the next level. And it just kind of, for me, it's always sort of worked out. Not that I didn't work hard as well, but I hit that level and I started doing it full time. And then I hit like another level where I was like, okay, I don't have to live like with my parents anymore. So I moved out here and we were like very lean when we moved out here. And then, you hit another level where you're like, okay, now we can get a nicer place and et cetera, et cetera. And, it just kind of, maybe it works differently for most people. If they are on Twitch, they're like 0 viewers, and then Fortnite season 6 comes out and they're at like, 5,000 or 10,000. But anyway.
Yeah, but I mean, but if you had a different approach fiscally, there may not be a Northernlion that we know. Like if you were spending, so you're making 1,700 and you're spending 1,600, you probably, and that continues, you're not going to have the time to dedicate. And I feel like that's something that may not be talked about or is overlooked, but it's how you control your time based on how you spend your money is going to allow you the at bat to even have a shot at this. And to me, the at bat is time, right? Like, you're going to be in a situation in a couple months where your time's going to be decreased, but it's probably, I mean, it's going to affect you, but it's not really going to affect you because you've spent all this time prior to that building, where you're not at a point where if you go away for a month or 90 days or whatever, like people are still going to be there. I don't know. I'm just super passionate about being fiscally responsible individually.
I will say I have a hot take. Like I'm fiscally responsible. I put the brakes on everything. And then like, I always feel like it's easier to relax your comfort level than it is to be like, oh, we bought something we shouldn't have bought and now we're on the hook for life, But I also, and this is the hot take, like I think that having a certain degree and lifestyle inflation, like increasing the amount of money it takes for you to live, is just something that happens to most people over time naturally. Like when you're 18, if you live with your parents and I mean, if you're buying groceries, you have like a grocery bill, but most people have like a lower cost of living than they'll have when they're 30. Maybe they need a car to get to work. They would rather not live with their parents. They rent or have a mortgage for their own place. They have, a significant other. They want to, go out to eat with them sometimes or go to the movies or go on a vacation or something. Kids cost money, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm also like, I feel like getting kicked in the teeth sometimes on going up has been a really good motivator for me, as backwards as it sounds. Like when I moved to Vancouver for the first time, I was like, man, like this is probably doubling my monthly expenses versus when I lived with my parents, obviously, because I was paying the rent. And I was like, it's time to get like serious. And by reconfiguring myself, or like I'm trying to think about like recontextualizing the way that I treat it, instead of like, oh, I'm making like X amount on YouTube playing video games, that's really cool. I was like, okay, it's time to hopefully grow this to like the next level so I can sustain this and keep, providing the things that you need to provide because people rely on me now.
And I think you saw that with your actions, especially I'd say like the past 2 or 3 years when you started taking programming. I was like, I knew you liked programming, but I think we had a conversation where you're like, hey, this is like a fail safe in the event. Like you felt like you're still like grinding on YouTube and then building a secondary potential career in the event. But you attribute that to increasing your expenses.
Yeah, I mean, and I would never say like, oh, if you're not motivated, just spend more money and then you'll get more motivated, because I think that makes no sense. But I do also think there's times where like, especially I always think in terms of streamers and YouTubers, because they like self-isolate, they like spend 8 hours a day in their office. So like if you get famous, like in your mom's basement, you might be like, I have no reason to leave my mom's basement, which is cool. But in some ways, I actually think it's cool because you're saving a lot of money, even if culturally it's kind of like, I don't know. I feel like now the culture is like, yeah, dude, live at home, save some money. When we were a little bit younger, it was like, oh, you're 22 and you live at home. Like, what went wrong? But obviously things are different now. But I look at it almost like if you don't, sometimes a little injection of like responsibility has helped me grow both professionally and personally. So instead of being like, oh, I hate to always go back to this because it really is punching down at Rob, but like Rob historically didn't want to buy or didn't want to use ceramic plates because then he would have to wash them. So why not just use disposable plates? Because then you could just throw them out and save a little bit of time. I understand the logic. And when I was much younger, I would have thought the same thing. It's like, oh, I could save on doing this chore that I hate by just buying paper plates instead. But in my experience, being like, oh, I don't want to do this, and then getting used to having to do it has made me a much better person and a much more responsible person over time. instead of like idealizing the zero responsibility lifestyle where I'm like, I'm exclusively going to stay as financially lean as possible. And if I ever go out to eat fast food, I'm going to give myself like 30 lashes publicly because it's embarrassing.
No, I didn't know where you're going with that, but no, I understand. So you're saying by taking on more, you push yourself to do more. And my response to that and my take on it is I mean, that is definitely a hot take for sure.
No question.
But my thing is like the inverse is like, hey, if you want something, right? So for me, I don't know why. I just remember my first big purchase. I bought a Ford Taurus. I bought out my grandma's Ford Taurus lease, and it was like 10 grand, and I had to finance it. I'm like, that's a ton of money. And then it's like I've been pretty fortunate where I'd work and save, but I like having to come up with that $300 every month, and like it's evaporating from your account. You're like, hey, I could have not driven a Ford Taurus, in my early 20s, but I'm like, man, that would have cost double to drive a Mustang or something like that. And I just feel like it's like a little bit kick in the teethy, but until you like have to buy something, like you don't know where your money goes. And I think I don't know. My take is that just the biggest thing for me is like, don't care what anyone else says, right? So like you said, oh, you're 25, you live in your mom's basement. If you're pogged out of your gourd and living in your mom's basement, then dude, that's it, but I understand what you're saying is that it allowed you to move the needle. Yeah, we went all over the place on that question. All right, we're gonna do one more before we wrap up here. This one is all right. This is from Corporal Schultz. It says, do you find that content where you take a hard L or hard W is more popular? Does good play or bad play net more views?
Taking a hard L usually sucks, but I accept it. I took a hard L on Hex, the Golden Goblet video that went out yesterday. I didn't read the rules going in because I was just like, it's a kid's game. You just make a line. And then I didn't even know, like I was blue. I don't know if blue goes blue to blue or if it goes red to red. And I lost over and over and over and over again, making like idiotic moves. And the like the dislike ratio for me is normally like 97 to 100. And on this one, it was like 92. And I'm like, something horrible happened. So it sucks, but I don't know. You kind of acknowledge it, and in some ways, people are like, it's funny. But I always think that like an unprecedented win is worth more. Like when I beat Slay the Spire on Ascension 20, I was like, nothing compares to that. After 6 months straight of losing, or your Tetris 99 win.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like that's the pinnacle. But I like the hard L's because like I feel like when you beat Sands, when you beat Ascension 20, when you win at Tetris 99, like you can't always control that. Like like for you, Ascension 20 took how long? If you had to guess,
I don't know, like 7 months. Or
7 months. It took me like 40 hours to get to Tetris 99, and you're gonna beat Ascension 20. You didn't know how long it would take. I knew I was gonna beat Tetris 99. So like, but you can control when you lose. To me, like you can make it a fun experience. Like if you have like in Tarkov, you have a really bad L. Like there's 8 million outs in my head. I'm like, oh, I can make this funny. But because you can recreate that a lot. But the win, you don't know. But I'm with you on that. Like even finishing the speed run, like people love to see like the journey of L's, and I feel like if you just have nothing but L's, there's no like reset button where it's like, all right, like you're invested in this journey of Ascension 20. If you just quit or you never won, like a lot of people are left kind of holding the bag. They're like, hey, we believed in this guy. And I think it's a cool moment. And I guess, I don't know if this is the question, but I think if you're not good at games, that's okay. But can you make what you're doing fun in a way? Like one of the things that I never even, during the Spelunky series, people are like, hey, you should go back and do a Golden Goblet Spelunky with Melf and Ryan because you've gotten really good at it. And like, I don't look at it like that. I'm just like, I just really have fun playing the game. And I think naturally, you'll get better doing that stuff. But yeah, but the question says, because I want us to answer the full question, says, do you think good play or really bad play nets more views, like brass tacks?
I think that my perspective is that the dream is great play, great commentary.
Okay.
I think I think it depends on the game. Like I don't want to. I'll watch anybody that I like playing Warzone. But if I was watching a stranger, I don't want to watch somebody that's trash and it's just gonna drop and then like get bodied 2 seconds in. If they're very entertaining, that's the exception. But otherwise, I want to at least like, because you're rooting for the streamer most of the time. I want to see someone that's at least competent. So I've long been a proponent that at least when it comes to competitive games, the number one thing holding me back is that I'm below average in most of them, I think. Now, I'm probably below average. A part of that is because 95% of my brain power is trying to keep the commentary gears turning and keep people entertained. And I think that works great in games that are a little less specifically competitive. However, I think the dream marriage is incredibly good, incredibly entertaining.
That is, and that's the unicorn, and I know that there's, people have differing opinions on the individual streamer. I'm just going to say it. I think for the most part, like I would say, I don't want to say the name, but you probably know what I'm thinking about. It's really good at games and puts on an incredible show. I think it's the unicorn. So when you go on a tear in Warzone, it's like, hey, you get a glimpse of unicornicity. When we win 4 in a row, it's like, you guys, you're watching Team Unity, you better bottle it up, because I can't tell you the next time we're gonna win 4 straight this Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern. We're gonna win 5 straight. Well, with that being said, thank you guys so much for tuning in. We appreciate you guys being here live. Thank you guys for reviewing. We're up to 452 reviews on iTunes. That's good wood. And we're halfway point, right? We've been doing this for a half year. When do we start this during quarantine?
I think we started in February, and then
the Northernlion curse is real. But
good timing, right?
Yeah, if you're listening to this, you can check out the video on youtube.com/Northernlion. I think next week, there may be a little lag in the episode because we'll probably push the live episode as opposed to doing 2 in 1 week. So just a heads up on that, housekeeping wise. And thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we'll see you guys next week.